So maybe you're hopeful that you can pass the bar exam, but you don't quite believe it's going to happen yet. It's a pretty normal reaction. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can move from hope to belief as you cross the bridge, moving from despair at the very beginning to expectation at the end. I know how to do it because I've helped thousands of people just like you succeed and pass their bar exams over the past 30 years. So stick around, we'll show you how you move from hope to belief. To my bridge from despair to hope to belief to expectation. Not quite as good as that bridge in the virtual background there, but you get the idea. In our last video, we talked about the first step on that bridge, moving from despair to hope. And it's an important bridge to begin to move towards because you'll never get any real progress on passing the bar as long as you remain stuck at the level of despair. And so in that video, I talked about the steps you want to take moving towards hope and how it looks and how it feels. And I encourage you to check that out if you haven't done so already. Today, I want to take the next step in our journey and look at moving from hope to belief. And you might ask yourself, well, why is it important to believe? I mean, isn't it enough that I just hope I'm going to pass the bar exam? And there are a lot of different ways that we could approach this, and an incredible amount has been written and taped and talked about and lectured on by people far more talented than I am when it comes to belief. One of the axioms that I use is an old saying from Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "Believe you can, and you're halfway there." You know, I think that when it comes to the bar exam, without belief, it is very difficult to pass. And so I'm not going to try and cover the ground of other people who've talked about the importance of belief. But what I do want to do is to talk a little bit about what belief means in the context of the bar exam. You see, it's been my experience in the thousands of people that I've worked with in the many years that I've been doing bar review, that people who don't really deeply believe that they can pass almost never do. You know, there's something about the way we're wired, the way that our brains work, that keeps us from really achieving our potential unless we believe that we can accomplish something. And without that belief, we end up in periods of self-sabotage. We create obstacles for ourselves that are nearly impossible to get through. I see this in bar study all the time when people procrastinate and put their studies off and suddenly they don't have enough time to do the work that they want to do. Or they tell themselves over and over again that they're no good at standardized tests or taking multiple choice questions or answering essays. And sure enough, the results tend to prove that out. I think that there's something about the way the human brain is wired and the protection of our ego that makes it important for us to not be wrong. And as a result of that, we end up looking for escape hatches, ways to prove that we're not a failure just because we fail a high stakes test like the bar exam. And so what happens is that non-consciously, when you don't believe you're going to be successful, you start finding ways to escape so that you're able to say with a straight face when it's all done, well, I didn't pass the exam, but I'm not a failure because I didn't have enough time to study, or I chose the wrong bar review, or I didn't have enough support from my family and friends, or whatever the reason might be. You know, there's some truth in probably all of those statements, but the reality is that everyone that gets through law school, that graduates, in my view, is capable of passing the bar. And I've helped people pass the bar after as many as 25 or more attempts at the exam. So I am pretty confident that there is no one on the planet who's gotten through law school, gotten their diploma, who can't pass a bar. And yet we see more people fail than pass. Why is that? Well, I think that to a certain extent, it's because people lose faith in themselves. Look, you think back to your law school experience, and unless you're one of those very rare people, it was not a happy time in your life. Studying for the law is not fun. It is a beatdown of your ego. It's a beatdown of your belief in yourself. It is a really nasty, ugly place to be. And I think that's true whether you went to a really nasty, big law school like I did, or you went to a small, friendly, happy law school. The point is, it's still tough, and it takes a lot out of people. And so we go in thinking we're pretty hot stuff. We come out thinking, oh my God, I don't know that I know much. And then the bar exam hits us, and we're suddenly hit with that sense of, oh my gosh, can I do this? Maybe I can't. Now, when someone moves to the point of hope, they've obviously come away from the despair of it's impossible. And there's a ray of hope, we would say. But a ray of hope generally isn't enough. And if you just stay at the hopeful level, in my experience, you won't be successful on the exam. So you've got to move from hope to belief. Because without belief, you just don't have the driving force. You don't have the compelling reason and the compelling purpose that's going to get you there. Now, how do you acquire belief? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But let me say that in large part, I think belief comes as you begin to see evidence of success. And so it is a function of reaching a critical mass, having enough successes, small successes, that you can build on them. I often tell my students when they're just starting out to reward themselves for their own successes, even if they're small wins. Why do we do that? Well, I think it helps build belief that you can do it, that you can be successful, that you can overcome all of those things that you've been told about. And you know, some people grow up in an environment where they're told over and over again that they're not successful and they're not good and they can't do things. Or society tells them, or our preconceived notions of privilege tell them who's going to be successful and who's not. And all of that is irrelevant. The only opinion that matters here is yours. And I really mean that. The only opinion that matters when it comes to passing the bar exam is your belief in your ability to be successful. And I know that some of you have had so many episodes of non-success that you begin to think it's impossible. I'll never be able to believe that I could do something differently. I want to show you some ways that you can do that. So how do you gain belief? Well, I think there are three broad categories. We want to look at language, we want to look at habits, and we want to look at tools. So let's begin with language. When it comes to language, you might think, that's just kind of woo stuff. I mean, what difference does it make what words I use? Well, in my experience, it makes a huge difference. We tend to create the worlds we live in by the words that we use. If you've been through my webinar on how to make the next bar exam, your last bar exam, I shared the story of a guy named Billy Bob and a hypnotist. And the short and long of it is that Billy Bob went up to a hypnotist doing a show one night and said, "You can't hypnotize me." And of course, he went into a deep hypnotic trance. And when he came out, he was unable to say his name and do a number of other simple tasks. And then the hypnotist snapped his fingers and he came out of it. And my point in the webinar is that to some extent, we're all like Billy Bob. We're all in a trance. We use certain words and certain language. I'm sure you've heard it or done it for yourself. There are things that you've said, I'm no good at, or I'm not strong at doing. For me, I'm no good at singing. I know I can't sing, and therefore I won't even try to sing. I absolutely am convinced that I can't sing. Now, I'm sure that there is a universe out there where I could be taught to sing and I would be passable at it. But because I've told myself I can't sing for so very long, I don't sing. And I think the point here is that in more significant ways, the words that we use indicate what our beliefs are. And so one of the things that you need to do is to be very mindful of the language that you use. When you start saying things like, I don't know if I can pass, or I hope I pass, well, that's better than I can't pass. But too often it's not enough. There's not the language of, I believe I can pass. And literally you need to say, I believe I can pass. I believe I'm capable. I believe I'm intelligent enough. I believe I'm worthy of being a member of the bar. Unfortunately, when I talk to students, I hear a lot of language that's very different than that. I'm not good enough at this. I'm not smart enough at that. I've never been a good essay writer. I really don't understand how to do things. I'm just no good with property. Sound familiar? We all do it, and it's not something that we can necessarily erase overnight, but you can be mindful of it. And mindfulness is really the key. I think that when you're aware of the language you're using, you're much less likely to use this negative limiting language. Now, one way that you can engage other people in your world to help is to say to them, when you hear me saying things that would indicate a lack of belief in my ability to pass the bar, I'd like you to call me out on it. I'd like you to hold me accountable. If I start using that language of, oh, it's really hard and I just don't know if I'm good enough to do this, or I just don't really understand how to handle these evidence questions, stop me, stop me. And then rephrase the statement immediately in your own mind. Well, I know how to handle evidence questions way better than I ever did before, or I'm beginning to master the hearsay exceptions in evidence, whatever it might be. The point is that you want to change your language. When you change your language, you change your world. And if you've ever been around people that are genuinely optimistic and happy, you notice that the language they use is commensurate with that. They are generally happy and optimistic. Now, it's easy to feel pessimistic about the bar, about the world, about politics, about a lot of things. But if you let yourself get dragged down into that, you lose the ability to have that belief that you need. So one of the ways that you can do it is to prime your own mental pump by using language that's going to be active and not passive. I can do this. I believe in myself. I believe in my ability to pass the bar. Not, I hope that someday I'll pass the bar. There's a difference, isn't there? And I think it's also the elimination of doubt in your language. When you begin to eliminate that doubt, even if you don't necessarily believe it the first time you say it, the more you say it, the more you will believe it. And I think it becomes a matter of building that in. And that leads us to the second way you build a belief, which is a habit. The more often you use those affirmations, those words of belief, the more you'll believe them, the more that they'll become true for you. And if you think about it, habits are really what get us through most of our day. But most of the habits that we have in life are non-thinking, they're non-conscious, and they're just sort of random. We have a habit of how we get up in the morning and what we do to brush our teeth and get out of bed and get off to work. We have habits about the way that we surf the internet. We have habits about the TV shows we watch and so on. We've all got lots of habits. Well, when you're trying to create a habit of belief, I think that you need to be purposeful about it. You need to set that out as a specific task. I want to create a habit of belief in myself and for the bar exam. You want it to be intentional. So when you complete an essay for your bar study, no matter how good or bad it was, just say, I'm proud of myself for having done this. I'm proud that I worked through this problem and that I'm learning from what I did. I believe this will get me closer to my goal of passing the bar exam. I think that you want your habits to be really designed when it comes to belief. I know that there are things that I want to do, and I design my habits in order to get me closer to that goal. Don't let yourself drift into negative habits. Negative habits might be, well, I stay awake at night worrying about the bar exam instead of getting up and just reading for a while. I mean, it's better than lying there awake, right? I create habits around what time I get up so that I've got some time to study, or I create habits for a daily exercise plan. In our course, we put in all sorts of those habits built into the course to help build the strength, the tools that lead you towards a position of belief. And I think these habits become cumulative. The more often you repeat them, the more often you see them, the more often you say them, the more powerful they become. You know, the first time you tell yourself, I can do this, it might be tentative. But the 100th time you tell yourself, I can do it, well, it's way better. And the 1,000th time, better still. And so the cumulative effect of being able to bring these beliefs together makes a difference in the way you study. And I know that some of you right now are thinking, I'm not going to watch any more of this because I don't have time. I got to go study. I'm busy. Right? Yeah, because you're afraid. And so what happens is you have to acknowledge that and say, the fear that I'm feeling needs to go away. I don't have a reason to be afraid. I'm going to be confident when I do this work. And that's worth way more than an hour of mindless study while you're multitasking and worried about what you're going to do when you don't pass the bar exam. And be honest, a lot of you have done that. So I think the habits that we create also help create the worlds that we live in. Now, I'm not naive about how difficult it is to change language and to change habits. And that's one of the reasons that in our course, we provide a number of different tools to help our students begin to get these ideas in their mind and begin to use them. Now, in our course, we've got a whole series of affirmations, videos that we've prepared. We do things called the 5-minute drop-in and the circle of excellence and so on. And they're part of the course. And we encourage you, if you're in the course, to check those out and use them on a daily basis, regardless of when your bar exam date is. For those of you that aren't in our course, I would recommend a tool that we suggest to our students. It's called Paraliminal Recordings, and we'll put a link here to this. The Paraliminals come from Learning Strategies out of Minnesota, and this is the company that also created Photo Reading, another tool that we use. Paraliminals are audio recordings that you listen to with different soundtracks in each ear, and the point of the soundtracks is to engage your conscious mind, get it out of the way, and speak to your non-conscious mind. And each paraliminal recording has a specific topic or a goal in mind. The recordings run about 20 to 30 minutes in length. You don't have to be doing anything. You just put on your headphones, sit back, close your eyes, and listen. They're wonderful tools, and we've been using them for years and years. In fact, we curated a set of 16 recordings with learning strategies specifically for the bar exam, and we make those available to our students as well. We think they make a huge difference because one of the things that they do is that they help install and instill these habits, things like belief. There's actually a paraliminal called belief. And it's a terrific one to use because it helps you build that belief muscle. It helps create the habits and change the language that you use. But there are also paraliminals to take away stress and anxiety, to help you sleep better and wake refreshed, to help you avoid overwhelm and a number of other items, and to deal with procrastination, which is a big one. So the point is that these tools can be very helpful. Now, if you meditate, I think meditation is one of the great tools to help change your belief structure. We recommend and share with our students a product from a company called Centerpoint Research Institute. We've done interviews with the late founder and creator of Centerpoint, Bill Harris. He was a good friend of ours. And we believe that meditation can be incredibly powerful. Now, Centerpoint put together a product called Holosync, which we really love. It's an audio, you just put it on and listen to it. It's a half hour to an hour in length, and it does a great job of meditating you. You don't have to sit quietly. You don't have to concentrate on your breathing. You don't have to do anything. In fact, you can have it going while you sleep. The point is that it's helping recreate synaptic responses that you want to have. It does it by using something called a binaural beat, which means a different sound frequency in the left and right ear. I really love these meditations because they're a great way to help you get purposeful in what you do. I did an interview with Bill shortly before he died, in which we talked about the importance of mindfulness or being purposeful. And he was very clear that one of the things that's so important for people in high stakes settings is that they think about what they're doing and why they're doing it, that we don't do things to hurt ourselves intentionally, and yet we do things that hurt ourselves all the time. And so one of the benefits of meditation is that it makes you aware of your choices. And one of the choices is, what language do I use? What habits do I create? What do I believe or not believe? And so if you're not meditating, I really encourage you to do so. If you're in our course, we recommend the Holosync audio meditation program, but you can also purchase that directly from Centerpoint if you're not in our course. And I really would recommend it to you. It's well worth the time that you spend every day just to get clear on the way you're thinking and what you're thinking about. Makes all the difference in the world. So I think those are some of the ways that you gain belief. But ultimately, where does belief come from? Well, I think it starts with all of the things I just described: the language, the habits, the tools. But ultimately, it's the result of the evidence that you see. The evidence of belief doesn't come all at once for most people. It doesn't come in a light bulb moment, or suddenly the lights turn on and everything is perfect and there's rainbows and unicorns. It doesn't happen that way. But for most of us, belief comes in small doses and increments. It's a critical mass that begins to build. It's small iterative examples. I see this a lot with our students. They'll be doing practice multi-state questions, and they'll be using the tools that we suggest, like photo reading and paraliminals and selective intuition. And they'll say, I'm not so sure it'll work. And I correct their language and say, well, let's take a different approach. Let's assume it'll work. Let's say I'm excited to see how well I can do on these 25 questions. And they begin to work through them. And what happens is that they start to get 10 or 12 or 15 correct. And they think, wow, that's better than I thought I'd do. And then they go back and they try the process again, and that 10 or 12 or 15 moves up to 18 or 19 or 20. Are you kidding me? 20 out of 25 questions correct? And they start to get belief. Oh my gosh, maybe I can do this. I really believe I can get a high score on the multi-state. You know, one of the reasons that we do video interviews with our successful students, besides the fact that we just love sharing their stories, is that so many of them went through that journey where they began to see incredible improvements. And when they talk about it, wow, it helps other people believe as well. So when you hear about someone whose score went up 70 points or 20 points or 40 points, whatever it might be, you're like, well, maybe that's possible. Maybe I could do that too. And that's the beginning of belief. So if you don't have the belief, we'll lend it to you for a short while until you've got some of your own. But the point I want to make is the belief comes from growth, so that you see the progress you're making, you see what's happening, and you begin to see what's possible for you. I think belief also comes from improvement. It can be determined in a lot of different ways, but I think improvement is incremental. Rarely do we have someone that goes from 5 questions out of 25 correct to 20 out of 25 correct in a single step. It comes incrementally, it comes in steps, which is why in our study approach, we use stepped repetition. We want to see people go step by step. The same is true when you're writing an essay. People rarely go from horrific essays to great essays overnight. They go step by step. It's one of the beauties of being able to repeat and try and work on different techniques to build your skills in all parts of your study. And so you want to be looking for the improvement and then rewarding yourself for that improvement as you see it. Oh, well, my essays went up by 150 words from what I was able to write under time conditions last time. I used better organization this time. I followed the writing process that I'm being taught more effectively this time. I reached the right conclusion on 3 of the 5 questions this time. I mean, whatever it might be, find that improvement and hold on to it. That's the beginning of belief. And then I think ultimately the evidence of belief is process. Once you begin to believe, you start doing things over and over. You start expecting, that's our next word, but you begin to have these moments of expectation that you can do what you set out to do. It comes from process. It comes from following the same steps in a systematic way. When I see bar students acting spasmodically, manically, just grabbing out for whatever comes along, that's rarely going to be successful. As I'm recording this, we're within a 30-day window before the bar exam, and this is a time when I tend to hear from people in other courses who are absolutely panicked because they realize that what they're getting in a big box bar review isn't working, and the chances of them passing the bar are very low. And my heart goes out to those folks because they're probably correct about that. Given the way they've studied and what they've done, they're not likely to be successful on this next bar exam. And there's very little that we can do in a short window of time to change that for them because the process isn't underway for them. But they can pass. And if you're one of those people, you can pass. It may take you longer, it may take an extra exam or two, but if you start the process now, you've got a much better chance of being successful. And that's so much more important than the spasmodic grabbing at everything. I had a student who was talking to me who said that they had literally 40 or 50 different bar review books in their home that they had grabbed because they were so frantic and so panicked about how to be successful on the exam. That doesn't get you there. That is not evidence of belief. It's not even evidence of hope, probably. It's absolute panic and sheer terror. Well, hopefully you've left the sheer terror and panic of despair behind. You're at least at the hopeful stage, or at least can see your way to the hopeful stage. And now my desire is that you would see the importance of belief. It is not enough to simply hope that you pass the bar exam. It's an important step, but it doesn't get you all the way across this very long bridge. Belief is the halfway point. It's the point at which you've really got a shot. You can really make this thing happen. And it begins to create momentum. And as you start to create that momentum, things begin to change very, very rapidly. And that's what we'll be talking about in our next video as we wrap up this 3-part series. We'll talk about the move on the second half of the bridge from belief to expectation. And it is an exciting time. I hope you'll stick around and check it out. Thanks for being with us. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon.